Welcome back to Math 103. This is video number 7 on measuring power. Based on the way we have defined the terms, can a player with veto power also be a dictator? Yes, certainly. If someone happens to appear in every winning coalition, that's what veto power means, then why not have one of those winning coalitions be one where the player appears alone without anyone else? So having veto power is certainly consistent with being a dictator. How about with the question, is a player with veto power necessarily also a dictator? Well, no, that's asking too much. So, for example, we were looking at the weighted voting system with quota 6 and weights 4, 4, and 1, and we concluded that these two players, so in our scenario, Northern and Central Jersey, each had veto power. But you see that neither one of them is a dictator. Neither one of them can single-handedly reach the quota of 6. So no, veto power does not entail dictator status. We go on to ask, can a dictator have veto power? Well, yes. After all, if you're a dictator, then you appear in a winning coalition by yourself. No reason why you couldn't appear in all the winning coalitions. So sure, a dictator can have veto power, and in fact, when we ask, does a dictator necessarily have veto power, there too the answer is yes. If you're a dictator, that means that you can reach the quota by yourself. That means that your weight is more than half of the total weight, which means that everybody else has less than half the total weight combined. That means that they cannot, on their own, pass anything without you voting yes. So a dictator also has veto power. There's one more special status which we need to look at, and that's the status of being a dummy. Now, in a more advanced course, you get to study imbeciles and morons. In this course, we just look at dummies. So a dummy, in this technical sense, is a player who is not critical in any winning coalition. So according to Bansaf, that would mean that a dummy has no actual power. So we can ask, for example, is Southern Jersey a dummy in the weighted voting system with quota 6 and weights 4, 3, and 1? Now, if we write out all the winning coalitions, we've got, as always, the Grand Coalition, consisting of everyone. We also have the winning coalition consisting of Northern and Central Jersey. The two of them have enough votes to get something passed. How about Northern and Southern? Not enough votes. Central and Southern? Not enough votes. So these are actually the only winning coalitions. And so when we ask whether Southern Jersey is ever critical, well, the only place it even appears is in the Grand Coalition, and we ask, does Southern Jersey refusing to join in with the rest of the Grand Coalition prevent it from remaining a winning coalition? Well, no. If Southern Jersey quits the Grand Coalition, the result is just Northern and Central, and they still show up, just the two of them, as a winning coalition. So, no, Southern Jersey is not critical. Northern and Central are critical where they appear, but Southern Jersey is never critical anywhere. We conclude that Southern Jersey is a dummy in this system. And just to be clear, that's not an insult to our friends who live in Southern Jersey. They should, however, be outraged. If a weighted voting system were set up like this for this advisory commission to the governor, the significance of this analysis is that even if that one vote right there faithfully reflected the proportional share of population, when you analyze the power dynamics here, the reality is Southern Jersey is never able to make a real difference in what gets passed or not. Either Northern and Central get together and vote yes, or they don't, and either way, it doesn't matter what Southern says. Right? So this is an example of being a dummy, and this is where, in real life, you've gotten lawsuits that, for example, Bansaf was involved in as early as the 1960s. So dummy status can be figured out, one way or the other, are you a dummy or not, just by analyzing the winning coalitions, but it's not quite as immediate as looking for the evidence of being a veto power player, appearing in every winning coalition, or being a dictator, appearing alone in a winning coalition, we do have to get into the analysis of being critical or not someplace in order to determine dummy status or non-dummy status. Here is a slightly more involved and highly relevant example. Consider a country with a parliamentary system whose 4 major parties, let's call them A, B, C, and D, have received 7 million votes, 5 million votes, 3 million votes, and 2 million votes, respectively, in the most recent election. Now, under the election rules in this parliamentary system, that means that weights are assigned to parties in proportion to their share of the popular vote. The election results in a parliament with quota and weights 12 as the quota and weights 7, 5, 3, 2. So in other words, for each million votes that you receive as a party, you get 1 additional vote in Parliament. So Party A votes as a block of 7 votes, Party B has a block of 5 votes, Party C has a block of 3 votes, Party D has a block of 2 votes. Our original intuition from the beginning of the chapter suggested that setting up the weighted voting system, setting up the Parliament in this way, would be enough to make sure that actual power was distributed in the same proportions as the popular votes received by the parties. Let's see how that plays out in practice. So we have 2 questions. Find the Banzhaf power distribution of this weighted voting system, and see if there are any dictators, dummies, or players with veto power. The first thing to do is always to write out the winning coalitions. Let's remember that the names of our players here are A, B, C, and D. When we write out the winning coalitions, it's important to use the letters rather than the numbers. Why does that even matter? Well, we'll see later in the chapter that if you have different players that happen to have the same weight, we're going to need to keep track in our listing of them who's who. Right, so it's going to be a good habit to call the players by their letter names here rather than by their weights when we're listing them in coalitions. As always, we have the Grand Coalition on our list of winning coalitions. We should always write that first so we don't forget. How can we list all the winning coalitions systematically? Well, what I recommend is start out with all of the 4-member winning coalitions. There is only one way to have a 4-member winning coalition. That's if everybody votes yes. Next, move on to the 3-member winning coalitions. What are all the different combinations of 3 players voting yes, who reach the quota of 12? Well, A, B, and C have a total weight of 15. Great. A, B, and C constitute a 3-member winning coalition. A, B, and D also have enough votes together to win. That's 7 plus 5 plus 2 is 14. That's enough. We see also that A, C, and D have just barely enough. A, C, and D together have exactly 7 plus 3 plus 2 is exactly 12 votes. They just barely make it. But notice that B, C, and D, the only other way to have exactly 3 players in a coalition together, they do not constitute a winning coalition. They come up just a little bit short. Alright, so we've systematically listed all the different 3-member coalitions. Right? How do we know that we've considered all the different possibilities? Think of it this way, including 3 people is the same as excluding 1. And there are only 4 different ways you can form a coalition here that excludes exactly 1 person. So we've considered all 4 possibilities. We've considered what if you exclude D, but include everyone else? What if you exclude C, but include everyone else? What if you exclude B, but include everyone else? Right, all 3 of those possibilities made it to the list of winning coalitions. And what if you exclude A and include B, C, and D? Well, that did not make it to our list here. They did not have enough weight, enough total weight to reach the quota. So that completes our list of 3-member winning coalitions. And finally, we ask about 2-member winning coalitions. There's only way to achieve that. There's only one way to achieve a quota of 12 with the combined weights of only 2 players, and that's to put A and B together in a winning coalition. So that is our complete list of winning coalitions, and now we're all set to complete the analysis. So we go through and underline critical players Is A critical in the Grand Coalition? Yes, because B, C, and D together do not constitute a winning coalition, so A really has to vote yes in the Grand Coalition in order for a motion to pass. Therefore, A is critical here. Notice that A appears in every winning coalition. Right? So A is critical in the Grand Coalition. That's equivalent to A having veto power, which is equivalent to A appearing in every winning coalition. How about B? Well, in the Grand Coalition, B is not critical in the Grand Coalition, which is to say that B does not appear in every winning coalition. A, C, and D could pass a proposal, could pass a motion, without B's assistance. So B is not critical in the Grand Coalition. Similarly, C is not critical in the Grand Coalition because A, B, and D could pass a motion by themselves. Is D critical here? No, because A, B, and C appear on the list of winning coalitions. Right? So A, B, and C can live without D's support, so D is not critical in the Grand Coalition. We move on to consider the other winning coalitions, the three-member winning coalitions. So A, notice, is going to be critical every time it appears. Not true of the others. Is B critical in this winning coalition? Well, yes, if B quit, in this scenario where A, B, and C are the only yes voters, and D is a dedicated no voter, if B suddenly gets the idea of quitting, leaving A and C alone, then they no longer have a winning coalition. So B is critical here. However, C is not critical here. If C quits, that leaves A and B still voting yes, and A and B still voting yes is enough to get a motion passed. Right? That shows up in the fact that A and B form a winning coalition, just the two of them. So C is not critical here. How about A, B, and D? All right, so B is indeed critical in this winning coalition for the same reason, because A and D can't pass something, just the two of them. D, however, is not critical, because if D quits in this scenario, then that's not going to make a difference. A and B will still pass something without D's support, so D is not critical. How about the winning coalition consisting of A, C, and D? Now here, everybody's critical. Right? If any member of this winning coalition suddenly decides that they're going to switch to a no vote, then whichever two members are left no longer constitute a winning coalition, so everybody is critical here, and in the winning coalition consisting of just A and B, both members are critical. Okay? There are no dictators here, there are no one-member winning coalitions, so in a two-member winning coalition, both members are critical. Great, so now we count up the total number of underlines, the total number of instances of criticality. There happen to be 10 of them, so all the fractions in the Banzhaf power index are going to be out of 10. In the case of Party A, it has 5 instances. In the case of Party A, it turns out that there are 5 instances of being critical, so its share of the power is 5 out of 10, in other words, 50%. B is critical in 1, 2, 3 out of 10, so B has 30% of the power, according to Banzhaf's conception. Party C is critical in only 1 of those 10 instances, and therefore has 10% of the actual power. And finally, D is critical in only 10% of the instances, 1 out of 10. So D has 10% of the power. Notice, by the way, and this is a useful check on your work, these fractions had very well better add up to 1, which is equivalent to saying these percentages had very well better add up to 100%. There are exactly 100 percentage points worth of actual power to be distributed among the players. Before going on to the next video, answer the following questions about the same example of a parliament set up as the weighted voting system quota 12 weights 7532. And it's important that that was based on the story that they received 7 million, 5 million, 3 million, and 2 million votes respectively in the election. determine for each party the percentage of the popular vote it received in the election. So 7 is what percentage of this total. 7 million votes is what percentage of the total number of votes. And then compare each party's share of actual power to its share of the popular votes. Okay, the share of actual power is what we computed on the previous slide. The share of the popular vote is what you're computing here. Is any party shortchanged? Does any party receive a smaller share of actual power than its share of the total weight? Does any party receive a larger share of power than its share of total weight, its share of all the votes?